Hey, it's Thomas Mulready from CoolCleveland.com, and we're here today at Cleveland's West Side Market. And we're here with Laura Taxel. Laura, thank you so much for meeting with us.
What better place to be?
You have just put together what's really the definitive book on Cleveland's West Side Market.
If there's something to know about the market, I think my co-author Marilyn Suszko and I found out about it.
This book, Cleveland's West Side Market, 100 years and still cooking. What great timing. Of course, West Side Market here just celebrated their 100th anniversary.
Right.
And, of course, just reopened.
After the fire, the first real fire up here in 100 years, if you
Really?
can believe it.
Yeah.
The only other mention of a fire we discovered was something relatively small and contained in the basement. So that really speaks to the quality of how the building was designed and put together.
Talk about when it was first put together and designed, because it was a little contentious. It almost didn't get built in a way,
Almost
right?
didn't get built, and it took 14 years from
Yeah.
the time they decided to do it until they opened the doors to the public in 1912. There was all kinds of hassles with the city, as there always are. There were citizens who complained about the bidding process and the design process, but eventually Mayor Tom Johnson pushed it through, overcame all the hurdles. Unfortunately, he died before it was time to open the door, and it was Newton D. Baker, also one of Cleveland's most progressive mayors, who cut the ribbon and welcomed everybody in.
And the fact that it's still owned by a city, this is an interesting thing that you talk about in your book as well, right?
It makes it unique. At one time, there were cities all over the country that had municipal city-owned markets. That was a service that the city felt it should provide its citizens. Now there are very few. So this place is unique architecturally and in how it operates. And most of all, what we learned when we were writing the book is that it's unique in that it's still authentic. It's not a place for tourists. It's a place for people to come buy groceries.
Tourists really love it, but we're here on the day that the market's open, and it really is people shopping, and they're getting their staples. They're getting the stuff they need to eat.
Absolutely, and there's products here for people who are trying to stretch a dollar, and foodies who are looking for something rare or exotic and don't care about the price. There's something for everybody here, as long as you want to eat good food.
And you do talk about the food that's offered here. A lot of it, of course, comes from the ethnics and the immigrants, the folks that came to Cleveland. They settled in this market and other markets at the time, but that's really where it still lies, isn't that right? That's who still really runs the place.
Well, there are a lot of ethnic people who have stands, but what I think is interesting is that the market is not a museum, it's a living place. And so as the patterns of immigration have changed, now instead of people from Eastern Europe who came here in the early 1900s, we have immigrants from the Middle East and Latin America, and they're owning stands and they're starting businesses here. So it keeps evolving.
It does stay fresh, and it seems that the trends now are coming back. It's almost like fresh food, farm to market, even the fact that people are eating meat again, and it's getting sexy again. This market just seems to be a little ahead of all those curves, doesn't it?
I don't think the market is ahead of the curve. What we learned as we did our research was that the market just stayed the same and everybody else caught up.
Right. Talk about the people, though, that did sort of make this place and the people that are still here, because that's really, if it wasn't for them, and this is a unique situation to be in. They're not in a shop. They're not in a supermarket. It's a very unique, very hard, this is not an easy life running a stand here.
No, it's not an easy life, but it provides what people would say was a good life if you're willing to work hard. Traditionally, people without a lot of English, without a lot of education, without a lot of skills were able to come here and start a business that fed their families, enabled them to buy a car and a home. That changed over time. You know, there are stand owners with college degrees in accounting, business, anthropology. There was a lawyer. People want to do business here because there's a kind of energy. And once you get sort of bit by the market bug, you come to love it. You want to stay here. People would say to us all the time as we interviewed them, it's in our blood. You know, you work at the market when you're a kid in high school. You think you're going to go off in the world and do something else, but you decide being here is way better than sitting behind a desk.
And over your shoulder here, Fernangles, over 100 years?
That's one of the oldest families in the market from the early days, and it's still the same family. Gordon still keeps the tradition going.
And around the corner, you've got Jonathan Sawyer with Noodle Cat, just opened up.
Right,
with
young and old.
Yeah. Talk about some of the other things you've got in the book besides really the history. Talk about the fact that this place has lived through all this modernization. I mean, supermarkets themselves have come around since this market was built.
When the market first opened in 1912, there was no such thing as a supermarket. There were also, people didn't have refrigeration at home, so they came shopping often. People tended to have big families at that time, and a lot of hardworking people needed hearty food, stick to your ribs food. Things changed. There were supermarkets. The people started to have cars, and so they could drive here, but there was no parking lot until the 60s. But the market has weathered good times and some bad times, but by sticking true to its purpose and selling food to people who are looking for quality, they've found a niche. There's something the supermarkets can't provide. It's that personal service. It's talking to people who get to know you, who know about the products that they sell, who can teach you how to cook. All you got to do is ask a question that make this place unique.
You talk about in your book the refrigeration, how in the basement here was really where a lot of that took place, because that was the coldest place to store everything.
Well, one of the amazing things we discovered in our research is that at one time the market rented out refrigerator space in the basement to customers, to consumers, because people wanted to buy things when they were in season or when the price was good and they had no place to keep it at home. So in the early years of the market, not only the vendors were keeping their food down in cold storage, but people could rent space, and you'd get a chit and you'd come to the back loading dock and somebody would go down and bring up your case of apples.
Awesome. You spent how many years on this? You
This
interviewed.
was 3 years of research to do the book. We interviewed over 300 people, vendors past and present, shoppers, people from the city, architectural historians, politicians, all kinds of people to get the whole story.
It's an amazing book, Laura. I really admire, and thank you for what you've done, the service that you've provided here. It's an amazing market, but this really hadn't been looked at in this depth. Photos by, of course, Barney Taxel, an amazing photographer. It's such a joy reading this book. Thank you for taking a few moments to talk with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, it's Thomas Mulready from CoolCleveland.com. Have a great week in Cool Cleveland.